perception of what the umbrella is the actual standard, or is it or does it change from person to person?
Once again, just because these things are fuzzy does not mean they have it's categories that are real and we use, right?
Again, so European doesn't necessarily
agree with
mean
you.
white.
It's fuzzy.
But that is my point, is that it's not just fuzzy, it's arbitrary, it's self-identified, or it's
not arbitrary.
by other people.
Our first review today, guys, is going to be from Abe Dinkus's channel. So Abe Dinkus started a little debate series over there called Foursquare. The last one I covered on here was Def Not Whatever and Mo Rebuttal and Reexamination, debating on do rights exist. So on this week, it's going to be JS Urban Adventures, Reexamination, Abe, and Mo Rebuttal. And they're going to be arguing, do race and racism exist? Now, I've kind of covered this before. I think a few months ago, it was JS Urban Adventures and Marte who had a debate, I think, on Speakeasy's channel, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong on word. I want to say it was on Speakeasy's, but I'm, don't quote me on that. But, and so I was just like, well, my thoughts on it is like, yeah, I think race exists. It's just a wild debate. So JS Urban Adventures is back to kind of continue to argue his point, and Mo Rebuttal is going to be, giving his rebuttal that racism and race does exist. So here we go. I watched a little bit of it today. It was pretty good.
How does that leave race? Is it real with any meaning at the end of it if you make it completely social?
I'm not. You're attributing that to one comment that I put in there, but on an offhand note that, hey guys, if you want to use this argument, you don't necessarily have to use it from a biological stance.
Okay, so let's say I don't use it from a biological stance. What am I talking about? Just people's beliefs?
I'm saying that it's still descriptively true that people will act on perception and what they see.
Right, but how does that begin to be useful then if it's not even having to do with biology or genetics or anything like that? Like, because we say it doesn't have to be biological.
Wait. You're injecting the word useful in this scenario. That syllogism did not imply that like necessarily this is something to live by. It's just that this thing exists.
Well, I mean, if a thing exists and I'm trying to think of a term that exists and describes something, but is not useful. You're saying I'm injecting useful, but the whole point of the...
So I think JS and Reexamination are both on the side of race and racism doesn't exist. And I think it's Mo that's just like, no, it does.
The word is to capture an idea that distinguishes itself from other ideas.
Intrinsic rights. How about that? Intrinsic rights. That's a descriptor, and people use it all the time, but it doesn't, it doesn't necessarily not necessarily reality or useful, right?
So then, if the idea of race is reinforced by social pressure,
I meant to not cover my crash out. I saw your crash out of it. I was going to talk about it, but if you don't want me to, I won't. It's toward the end, everybody. All three are different. Well, what's Reexamination's POV then? Because I know JS and Mo's. One is yes. Yes, one is yes, no, one is no. Oh, so one is for sure, one is no, and the one is like, Then
it's just as real as rights.
Or empathy.
If it has force behind it, then yeah, you can make a lot of things to reality.
So tomorrow, if I grab all of the pew-pews and I say that all the JJs get out of America, then because they're not white, does that become descriptively true after power is applied?
What become descriptively true?
That the Jays are no longer white.
They're not here.
No, that they're no longer here, or they're no longer the same race as somebody who shares the same facial structure and skin pigment.
Well, that would be...
I see. Okay, Reexamination is no... Okay, so yeah. So re-examination is race isn't real, but racism is real. Okay. All right.
That would be racism. So that would make racism real.
So, but that would that make race real where it wasn't before?
It would make race real in the context of they're using a race in order to justify their horrible acts.
But if they didn't think of the idea until later, the race didn't exist until they enforced the idea they had, right? If it was all conceptual.
Well, no, it's a description. It's descriptively true. They're just
So is this the cross-examination right here? Like after the opening statements, re-examination's kind of doing a cross-examination with each?
using it in a untoward way.
Gentlemen,
Okay,
that
well,
is
clock
time.
is out.
Do you feel like you've made any headway?
No, I still don't know what race is.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
We've done our
Beautiful.
Great. That's good stuff because it just means that the open part will be more ferocious. Where would we like to go now? Who wants to be in the 1v2 hot seat next?
I'll do it
JS?
just to rip the Band-Aid off, I guess.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I see the format now. So all three of them go through cross-examinations from the other two. Okay.
That's fair.
I'm going to skip ahead. I want to get to the open part here. So now JS is in the hot seat. Or is this the actual open part?
I think you can be racist.
Okay, but how do you know they're not being racist? You have access to other minds.
You're
Is
begging
this
the
what this
question.
is?
You're saying if somebody's being racist, does that mean that they're evil? I'm
Okay,
saying
that's fine. But
they're
how
not
do you
being
know they're
racist.
not being racist? Let's go back to the original question. How do you know they're not being racist?
Because it doesn't exist.
That's not that means nothing. You're just reasserting that it doesn't exist
Yeah.
without telling me exactly how you know they're not being racist.
Well, because we already discussed race doesn't exist. It's arbitrary, inconsistent, subjective,
Okay.
usually self-identified.
Okay, hold on.
You're
I
not gonna
can't
answer the
really
question.
tell my race. You can just say I'm white, which is
JS,
Not gonna answer the question, all right?
JS, I got a question for you. When they put
No, you
Otabanga,
didn't.
Each was 10 minutes, then it's 1 hour open. Okay. All right, here. I just want to get to the open part where it's the three-way. Here we go. I see it. This is begin. So here it is. The three-way dance has begun. The triple threat match has begun. Three-way debate. It's okay if it's in a three-way, baby. Let's do this.
oh, but then again, how do you determine? For example, is the rapper
hold on,
Logic
hold on.
black?
Hold on. Wait, we're getting away from the question.
Well,
Should the medical community should the medical community still scan or still basically treat or look at black people for sickle cell? Should they do that or not? Because that's what the medical community
I think
does.
doctors should do physicals on all people.
all people. Actually, JS, great. Okay, tell you what, JS, I agree. I'm gonna go along with this. Yeah, we should scan everybody for everything. But in the future, when we have giant tubes where people can walk in and a giant little laser comes through and scans them perfectly and finds every possible fucking thing that could be wrong with them, I agree with you. But that's not how modern medical works. They base their what they treat for on patterns and most likely outcomes. That's how the current medical community operates. So in the future, when everything is utopia, great, we can go down that. But JS, the question still remains: should they still scan for sickle cell in Black community or not?
Yeah, I'm fine with observing.
So
patterns.
race exists. Great.
It doesn't follow.
Can I ask a clarifier though on this? Is it genetic markers that are sought for, or is it specifically color of skin?
It's someone comes in and they're black, and they are then put into the category. Okay, this person potentially needs to be looked at for sickle cell potentially.
Interesting.
That's my understanding.
So it would not show up in the genetics whether or not they would have sickle cell or not. Are you sure about that?
I didn't make that claim. I mean, potentially you could do a genetic scan, but that would still be like, okay, so you're going to genetically scan every human being. Once again, we go back to the utopia future where we have the medical diagnosis to do this, and it catches up, but we don't have that.
Okay.
It's funny, Descartes Kane, because on their chat, EOD just said the same thing. It's why medical forms ask about family history. That has nothing to do with race, so it doesn't apply race. Yeah, but there have been correlations that certain race are more linked to, like African Americans are more likely to get sickle cell anemia. It doesn't mean that. It's only just means that there's a link there to the race. It's not something that we could just ignore.
They're quote unquote well, I'll just say lineages. Are other lineages capable of having sickle cell, or is it only people that look black on the outside?
It comes from the area with malaria, and it was a mutation in order to defend against malaria. But it is more commonly in the black community.
Okay, so
there's different parts of Africa that have this as well.
You mean like Northern Africa, where like Algeria and Libya?
So is the claim that race and ethnicity are the same thing then?
Well, no, not the same thing. No, I would say that ethnicity is a subcategory of race when we're talking about.
I mean, it's true. It doesn't narrow it down to race. However, it is proof that, they're like race exists. And that's all that Mo is trying to argue for, that race and racism do exist.
Scriptures.
Well, also, if you're saying that it has an environmental cause, then that's not necessarily a genetic cause. It's just damage that's carried down throughout time.
I think you both would agree they should still continue to screen the black community for sickle cell, right?
Sure. Yeah, you're going to turn me into a race realist, Mo. I know I read the bell curve, and apparently black people have low IQs. So I guess I should just assume every black person is a dumbass.
Well, that's a bit extreme.
So I would say that phenotype still does a job for this. If
I'm talking about real medical community, the medical reality we lived in, and a really real thing that is important when it comes to race by identifying medical treatments.
But as long as phenotype is different than race, I could just use phenotype and get the exact same effect, if not better.
If you could use phenotype instead of race.
If I say phenotype instead of race, I'm actually more accurate.
Phenotype would not account for the area from where they come from.
What do you mean?
For malaria, it matters like ancestry-wise where they come from.
Okay, but then wouldn't it still catch all of it if we use phenotype? Because it would test both the people who do and do not have it. So you just do it across the board for phenotype?
This is once again, you have to understand. My definition comes from for race is statistic clustering, right? Obviously, you're going to have exceptions. You're going to have people who are like in Europe or whatever, and they look completely sub-Saharan African or something, right? The exception does not prove the rule.
So the clustering you're talking about doesn't have. So the clustering you're talking about doesn't even have to be visible. So if you had like a malaria in Greece and half the people from Greece had sickle cell anemia as a result of that, then you would have two different races that are both Greek.
You would scan for both of them, but once again, it would be based on race. It would be okay. Now we have two categories. We have two races instead of one race to look at.
Okay, so then sickle cell anemia is enough to designate a race. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm saying that your claim earlier that race is unnecessary and doesn't do anything is proven false by the medical community.
No, what I'm saying is when I asked you a couple times whether race and phenotype were the same thing, you said phenotype was part of it, meaning that it was not doing all of it, meaning that there's more work to be done by other factors.
Because phenotype is when you go into phenotype, you have statistic clustering of geographical locations.
Okay, so that would include
ethnicity. That's the ethnicity, and then you have the umbrella term of race.
Okay, so then if that's the ethnicity and the clustering describes a part of a certain geographic area, then the race doesn't actually do anything because my Greek analogy would totally work then, because all we're talking about with race then would be like a place where people look the same outwardly, and then some of the people who look the same outwardly have sickle cell, but not all of them do, because not all of them are going to be exposed to malaria in the same concentration.
And that would still be a true descriptive claim of race. So yeah.
So sickle cell would be enough to designate race, on its own, or no?
I'm using this for multiple reasons. Both of you say race don't exist. And your claim in your opening was that it's useless, but apparently the medical community disagrees with you highly, especially when it comes to bone marrow transplant, by the way. and that is a really big problem.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much, Nate, for the $5. Now, over half of the chat wears Skittles outfits with prosthetic attachments. Oh no, not the prosthetic attachments. Like the stream. Yeah, I agree. There are a lot of gays in the chat, huh, Nate? Thank you very much, brother, for the $5. Only 5 more to go for that super chat goal, guys. Hey, how's it going, Casper? Casper Swift. Good to see you.
So when it comes to donor, at whites have, I think it's upper 79% of, 79% success to get a donor. Blacks are like, they only have like, I think it's like 29%. So there actually is there's a lack of bone marrow for donations for transplants for blacks. So
I can believe in genetic variants and not have to believe in race. I can believe that there is variety in the gene pool without having to believe in race. I can believe in phenotypes without having to believe in race.
What do you mean by race? What is your definition of race? Because
it seems I want to know that too, because here's the thing. Like, if you think that, I don't know, we should call it something else, or I don't know, like that's one art. That's like that's one thing. But like, if you're just denying that there's differences in general for whatever reason, that's something different.
Like, I'm saying it's a descriptor claim, and I'm not attributing any hierarchy or anything like that. But this is very important things inside the medical community. So why is that? What is you have? I assume you're going to go to the more, I guess,
metaphysics.
Every person is made in the image of God, so race doesn't exist. Is that kind of the claim? Okay, so look, man, I can agree with that. I can even grant that. And I tell you what, Rex, when God willing, we both end up.
The variation is an indicator of race / religion, etc. This is just wordplay.
In heaven, and you're sitting there because you're going before me, and then I show up, and you're like, "Look, Mo,
is that a threat?
Look around. Do you see race?" I will gladly concede. But while we're on the mortal plane and while we're in a fallen state, the descriptor claim is true. You might not like it, but it's true.
But the problem is, if you said race was phenotype, it'd be a much harder argument to make. But you claimed multiple times now that phenotype is not race. A phenotype is actually observable, but now we're talking about race in terms of invisible, inheritable traits that may or may not correspond to your phenotype.
Let me be clear. Let me be clear. So when I talk about phenotype, that isn't in my description of race, but it's important that it's the key thing here, typically linked to ancestry and historically geographic clustering. So just because you have, let's say, okay, this guy is black, right? You can look at his lineage and where it comes from, and it would be geographically clustered in a certain area. That's all the descriptor claim is.
Yeah, exactly. But if a person believes race does not exist, I think they mean we're all the same race because we can all mate and make children, so we are one species. Robert Andrew would have the wordplay. Yeah, I think that's where, like, the people who are arguing against how race doesn't exist, I think that's what they're getting at. Because I think they even later say that in the debate that, well, we are all just one race. And it's like, yeah, that's true. Like we are all one people. There's not different species of people, but we're not, when I say, hey, that he's a different race than I am or something, I'm not saying he's a different species. So I think that's why it's important to play the word games, if you will, because I think that's where it's important to play the word games, because if you're just saying like, well, we're all the same species, it's like, well, okay, yeah, obviously we're all the same species, but there are differences in like our skin colors and facial features, hair features, even body types, via different races. And so to say that, well, those differences don't exist, that's just a lie, So I think that's where word games is important.
I jump in here and ask you a question though, because there was a comment made early on about from JS, I believe, where he said, what if he has one parent that's black? And that would make him 50-50. But if he appears as white, he may still have the same elevated rates of sickle cell and be passed over because the claim is he's white, regardless of.
That's what I've been implying. It's not that differences don't exist. It's that the category is too broad the way we use it to gather useful information. Asian can mean Japanese or Filipino. Well, yeah, Asian could also mean Indian too. So that's another thing. But it's one of those things where, like, when we say an Asian person, we kind of know what we're all talking about. Only recently have they been like using Asian to cover for like Indians or something. And that's like a very lefty type of thing where it's like, oh yeah, these Asians, and it's like, well, we think of Asians, we think of like, oh, like a Japanese person or some shit, you know, the slanted eyes, the dark hair, the you know, things of that nature. But when they say Asian, now it's like they've included Indians in that. It's like no one thinks of Indians when they say Asians. So yeah, I don't know. Nope, not Indian. God literally built 5E Himalayas to make them different and keep them away. Yeah.
Whether or not he has parentage that is not.
But okay, yeah, even in that case, you're still looking at a
yeah, there you go. They call Pakistani grooming gangs Asian grooming gangs. Yeah. And like they purposely did that to cover for the Muslim grooming gangs. You know, well, Asian grooming gang, and it's like the visual you get in your head is it's a bunch of like, you know, Japanese or Chinese people doing it, right? But in reality, it's Muslim, it's Pakistanis.
A medical situation to consider based on race. Just because he's half black and half white.
But if it's not visible, how do you screen for it if it's not visible?
Now, I think it's important. See, I think it's important to have these conversations. And it's like, yes, I also agree it's good to call out the word games that the lefties play in order to try to cover for certain races or groups of people. I think that's a good conversation to have, but I'll get to it in a little bit because Mo actually like calls it out. And I'm glad he did because I noticed it too, that this is kind of a way to kind of dismantle the left and the word games they play. But I don't think the strategy is just to say that these differences don't exist, because that's what I hear when you say race or racism doesn't exist, that these differences don't exist. It's like, well, they do. If you want to, I don't know, call them something else or narrow down the word games a bit on this stuff, that's fine.
Well, does the exception disprove the rule?
Well, we're talking about lineage, right? And we're talking about what's invisible. We're not. You said you screen for race. So if a guy looks white,
look, this goes back to. I will admit that when it comes to race and even ethnicity, it can be fuzzy lines. And I have another example that we can discuss, but it is fuzzy. But just because it's fuzzy doesn't mean that it's not categorically true. Once again,
yeah. Thank you very much, Taco, for the 5. I'll send a super chat, but I refuse to hit that straight like button. All right. Hey, I'll take the 5er instead. Thank you very much, Taco. And good to see you, Aries.
The grain of sand and a beach analogy.
Right, which was why I think the phenotype is much more useful, because it actually describes something that can be objectively observed.
Well, not necessarily, right? Because here, I'll give you an example, right? If you have, I'll just make up something, right? Let's say you have a certain ethnicity that is part of like the black race, and they have like a certain facial structure, right? That's different from other facial structures. Like they maybe whatever, right? They have like flatter noses or something like that, right? I don't know. And then you have another guy in the U.S. and he has an accent and gets slapped in the face, and he had a really long nose before. That doesn't prove anything.
Okay, so we consider them both equally black, right?
Say that again.
You would consider them both equally black, right?
No, because he doesn't link his ancestry to geographical clustering of the area that would be considered under the umbrella of black.
Wait. So, but he has just as dark skin, right? And he has many of the general same features.
No. I'm saying that feature-wise, phenotype, right? He got slapped in the face, and his phenotype looks different now. That doesn't prove his ancestry.
Well, phenotype is not physiognomy. Phenotype is talking about like
I know,
white,
but phenotype
Asian,
is
Latino.
I know. Phenotype is I get that, but it's still perception. You're perceiving it.
Okay, so isn't medical history a perception as well? Because if I want to say that somebody has a concentration of fat around their eyes.
No, medical history will be based on your ancestry.
Wouldn't
Like
phenotype?
Thank you very much, Taco, for the other $5. Fine, I'll hit the button, but it doesn't mean I'm straight. Okay, that's fine. That is fine. You could still be gay, even if after hitting that like button and sending me the $5. I appreciate it. Ken, thank you very much for the Canadian too. You guys in chat are funny. Yes, they are. Thank you very much, Ken.
Have you based on your ancestry?
To a large degree, yes, it would.
What's the degree that it wouldn't?
Well, I'm not, once again, the grandstand beach. I can't give you.
No, I mean,
moment.
like,
it's fuzzy.
But phenotype is 100% genetic. Wouldn't you agree, though?
Yeah.
Okay, so then to what degree were you saying it wasn't?
So the guy getting slapped in the face with a 2x4, and he has a perceived change in his physiology, but it doesn't have anything to do with his ancestry.
But that goes back to JS's Michael Jackson example. It's not talking about phenotype at that point anymore.
You're proving my point here, that it's based on ancestry.
Why do we have
geographic
different
clustering.
phenotypes?
Because of genetic drift, geographic distance, genetics, sharing.
Yeah.
So you would say
environmental.
It's adaptation. We have people people have squinty eyes if they live in the snow to stop the light blindness from the snow that bounces off their eyes. There were tribes that had curled feet because they would climb trees to get their food. Dark skin color is going to mean that you live near the equator and there's a lot of sunlight. Over time, you could take 5 black couples and you can move them to Antarctica, or you could take 5 white couples and you can move them to Nigeria, and they could have kids within their own family group. Within 10 generations, those kids are going to be a different color. They're going to have different phenotypes. Their kids over generations, I don't know how many generations it takes, but if you had pale white people.
You're proving my point.
And you move them. No. Well, the point is they're still the same lineage, but they have different phenotypes because of where they live. So the geographic clustering, that's why I'm saying that's arbitrary.
But you're just picking a random point in time. No. But you're saying in your example, you're saying they're intermingling, and over enough generations, they would look more like the native inhabitants, correct?
No, they're not intermingling. They're only mating within their group. So that's why I say 5 white couples to avoid incest or something like that. You have 5 pale white couples, man and woman, man and woman, man and woman, and they go to Nigeria and they only breed within their group. Within 10 generations, those kids are going to be much darker than their great-great-great-great-grandparents, but they came from the same lineage they came from the same geographic clustering. They came from the same lineage. They moved to a different area. Now they have different phenotypes. Now they're
because of environmental impacts, right? Like more sun, that sort of thing, right? Is that the idea?
What if? Yeah, my ancestors could be.
Okay.
I would say all of our ancestors were probably olive-colored skin tone from the Mediterranean region.
But
the Fertile Crescent
that is
Mesopotamia.
The example you just gave. That's why, in my description, is statistically clustering, right? You're giving 5 people that doesn't account for the entire race or the entire ethnicity of that group.
It does after dozens and dozens and dozens of generations, right? 5 people, each have 5 kids. Those have 5. Those have 5. It takes
a long time.
I don't even think it would. I think that those kids the next generation would be darker, and then the next generation would be darker, and then they would start to, and
then eventually you get Wesley Snipes
based on
darkness. Darkness is spreading.
All you're proving here is people can get a tan. If I stay on the sun long enough, I can get a tan.
Based on access to food, they're going to get skinnier. And then based off of socioeconomic conditions and education, they're going to get a little dumber.
Well, let me ask you this.
Pretty soon, you have a bunch of white kids that turned into a bunch of Nigerians. But they have
real quick, Mo, let's say that no matter what, humans never change their phenotype. You always look average, about the same across the world, right? And then the same sickle cell anemia phenomenon is happening under the skin. Would you say there are different races at that point, or no?
Wait, in this hypothetical,
yes. Let's say
races.
Let's say
the exact same.
what I'm saying is, let's say there's only one phenotype. There's only one physical general appearance, like they're all Asian or they're all Latino or something like that, and that environmental factors don't change whatsoever.
We all look like JS, which is unfortunate.
Sure, let's say we all look like JS around the world. It's a bunch of JS clones,
Okay.
and then you take the same malaria situation and cluster it at a certain part of wherever, and then you say it's unique to that situation that these JSs have sickle cell anemia. Would that still be race?
That would be ethnicity. But what you're describing here, so in that world, right, in that reality, there wouldn't be a race. Well, I guess you could say there would be one race. It would just be all white, right? But they would still have to screen for it based on ethnicity and geographical clustering, where they come from.
Okay, how would they screen for it for ethnicity if they all look like JS?
Sorry, I meant geographical location. Sorry, let me clarify.
So geographical location is race,
because that's where the malaria would be.
So
no, you're asking me. No, you're asking me a very specific question. In this hypothetical, we all look like JS. We're all white. Malaria still exists, I'm assuming, right? So because we're screening for it.
Yeah. Let's just say it's closer to the same area.
Yeah, the medical community would have to say, okay, then it would be, much harder, because then they would have to say, okay, where are you from? Basically, they'd have to find, where does your ancestry come from? Where geographical location do you trace your ancestry from? It would be a much harder thing to screen for.
Mesopotamia.
But you could do that. But you could do that in general, right?
In general, how?
Like, just ask every patient the same thing.
I mean, don't we collect the information?
Well, that would, you're basically replacing the box of black, white, or Hispanic with where I'm from. So
because in this scenario, that's the only consequential thing for health.
We can call race a Zuckbark. It doesn't change the reality of what it is.
Hold on, gentlemen. If we're being fair, if you go into a doctor's office of any kind and you're actually being seen, you're going to have medical history of family members. You're going to have all of that also put into the system. Regardless of your race, you're going to fill out, health risks from your family members, on your parent, is there heart disease in your family? Is there this? Is there this? So that.
And the doctor's going to be like, yeah, excuse me, Jamal. I noticed you didn't check off the sickle cell box. You are Block. You realize that, right? You have to check that off there. Okay.
That's already going to be in the paperwork when you're being seen. I'm just throw that out there for you, because if you've been to the hospital a few times, you'll realize that you have to fill out that paperwork every single time, regardless of who you are, to be seen. So,
right.
I remember that joke, Bandit. Yeah. If people didn't live where all the mosquitoes are. Classic.
I'm just trying to isolate the idea that if health is consequential based on a certain area from where you are, regardless of what you look like, well, let's maximize the regardless of what you look like, and then see if the same model holds as necessary that race exists.
It seems like that, Rix, but I don't really know if that's really analogous, right? Because you're having to change, once again, you're just checking a different box. I could go down, I could even grant it and say, yeah, you're just checking a different box to screen for this thing from this certain area. But the current reality is, in the medical field, they screen based on race, because one race has a higher percentage of it than others.
I agree that they have that on a piece of paper that you can check a box for, and that people might operate off of that sort of idea.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, or people die.
What I'm saying is that in the same scenario of the same considerations, if you just took that off, then you would use another method. Like if you're saying that that's shorthand for geography, well, then it's like, well, if you can't use geography and you would still have the same effect, you would just have it without any phenotypic differences, any appearance differences.
Yeah, you can play with the different variables of how this would look in a different hypothetical, but at the end of the day, currently,
is Mo smoking out of a pipe, like an actual corn cob pipe? Look at him trying to be class up in here.
Modern medicine, this is how they screen for this if you're Black.
So race wouldn't exist, or race would not exist where the phenotypes were different, but the genetics. Sorry, where the phenotypes were the same, but genetics were different.
Say that one more time.
Race would not exist where the phenotype is all the same, but the genetics are all different. Let's say the genetics are all hidden. They don't manifest in your phenotype whatsoever. Would race still exist?
But there's still phenotypes, right?
It's one phenotype all over the world, but different genetics under the skin.
Okay.
Would race exist? Would race exist if there were like huge medical differences?
Well, no. If we all looked like JS, once again, my definition of race is an umbrella term, right? And it encapsulates a bunch of different ethnicities based on geographical clustering. So, in your hypothetical, if everyone looked like JS, well, then no, you wouldn't have a thing called race.
Okay, so the underlying
it's an umbrella term.
Okay, so the underlying medical thing is just circumstantial to where you live. It's not dependent upon how you look.
Wait, say that one more time.
The underlying medical thing is not substantial to where you live or where you were born. It's just substantial to how you look. Or sorry, yeah, it's not.
No, it is substantial. It is substantial to where you're from and where you're born, because malaria, and that is in certain areas. So
malaria. Thank you very much, Nate, for the $5. Too many. YT won't let me send my jokes. Yeah, I know, right? Stupid YouTube. YouTube always has to spoil all the fun, but we know what you're trying to say, Nate. We get it. We get your little dog whistles here. But thank you very much, Nate, for the $5. Only one more to go to complete that super chat to go. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. What was the timestamp I wrote down? 2:10. I'm going to go a little bit before 2:10.
I'm Spaniard. Like I have like I forget the percentage, but it's like it's Irish, a little bit of Spaniard, and Scandinavian. So
okay.
Wow, Mo's a whole bunch of rebuttal, huh? Thank you very much, Kokomo, for the Australian 8. And thank you for helping me complete that super chat goal. What the heck did I say the goal was? I'll crip walk. All right, let's do the crip walk. Well, there you go. There you go. There is me doing the crip walk. Okay, let me remove this from here. Only remember, guys, only you can help me with the super chats. Let's restart that super chat goal. Let's see. We'll do beer bath. All right. Thank you guys very much. Now remember, only you could support the show.
This all on my own. Oh, I know. Send me super chats.
Send me super chats. All right, let's do this.
So, but generally, would you consider the Spanish people to be white?
You know, conquistador shit. Go and take care of the Aztecs.
Would you consider the Spaniards overall to be white people?
I guess I would consider them in the umbrella term of probably white. I guess I would consider them that, but I don't know.
Even though they're typically darker and definitely distinct from, say, the Nordic, the Germanic, the English.
because once again, and that's why it's statistical clustering and geographical is important in my definition, because just because someone has like if you JS example, a group goes somewhere and they get a tan, right? That doesn't change their
your phenotypes could be
genetics.
Black, brown, or white. You could be from Latin America or Spain, and you would always be Hispanic. Hispanic is a race. So let me read you something I wrote.
I thought race doesn't exist, JS.
According to let me read you something I wrote. The U.S. Office of Personnel Management's Guide to Personnel Data Standards on Ethnicity and Race Identification has the following options for how you identify as your race: Hispanic or Latino, American Indian or Alaskan Native, Asian, Black or African American, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
And white. So Asian, you could be a white Russian, but you're actually Asian. You could be a black Latin American person, but your race would be Hispanic, or would your race be black? Which would it be? This is why it's arbitrary and inconsistent. And it's
do you think when they type Asian, they're thinking Russian? JS. Do you think that's what they think when they check that box? Do you think they're thinking that they're Russian?
Well, what they're thinking is a construct.
I don't know what they're thinking, and I don't know what they're going to answer. And
you don't know what they're thinking, really?
The majority of the time,
you don't know what they're thinking, JS?
Hold on.
You don't think that?
Hold on. We'll take that one step further. What about India? India is Asia, and most people don't automatically think Asian when they think Indian.
And they don't say Indian's a race.
Right.
Because there's Bangladeshi, there's Sri Lankan. We don't have a name for the people who live in the at least not that I've heard, at least not on any medical records I've ever seen, of the South, right. Well, the Southeast Asia would be China. Southern Asia would be the subcontinent. But we don't have subcontinental on that form.
That form states that white includes Middle Eastern or North African descent.
Because they're Caucasian.
So an Iraqi Muslim or an Egyptian would be white.
I don't know why.
That's crazy. Rips, thank you very much for the $5. All studies show AA is substantially less intelligent and more dangerous than YTs. This is the real adult convo. All right. Well, thank you very much, Rips, for the $5. Very much appreciated. Emmett says, stop calling them Asians. God literally built the highest peaks of the world to keep them away. Yes. Yes, indeed. Indeedy do. Natural borders. I'm for that.
The Spanish wouldn't be North African because they were part of that major Islamic conquest that came through North Africa. So, and that was for hundreds of years that Cordoba was taken over and places like that in Spain where they were part of the conquest. So I don't know how they're white after all that. Like, especially, I don't know, again, just based on how many wars have happened in Europe based on lineage, obviously. When we say it's an umbrella term, it's like, whose umbrella term are we using? Whose perception of what the umbrella is the actual standard? Or is it or does it change from person to person?
Once again, just because these things are fuzzy does not mean they have it's categories that are real and we use, right? Again,
so European doesn't necessarily
agree with you,
mean
it's fuzzy.
But that is my point, is that it's not just fuzzy, it's arbitrary, it's self-identified, or
it's not arbitrary.
Other people.
I would say sickle cell is not arbitrary.
If I have a black dad and a white mom,
sickle cell is not blackness,
and I identify as black, but you identify.
No, the entailment of it being arbitrary means that they wouldn't check for that, and that doesn't mean anything.
But sickle cell isn't blackness. You would agree, right? Sickle cell is not a consequence of having black skin, nor is not being black.
I identify as a sickle cell American.
Preventative for having sickle cell.
Sickle cell is a consequence of ancestry from a certain geographical location.
Not always, though, right? It's possible to take malaria and introduce it to a place so as to have the effect elsewhere.
Well, hypothetically, yeah, but that's not the reality we live in.
I agree that the circumstances are different, but it would not necessitate purely from genetics. It would be genetics would be affected by something. So, for example, if I live near Chernobyl and all of my kids have flippers, that wouldn't be a race.
Or they look like JS, then you're like, wow, something's going wrong, horribly wrong here.
I live at Chernobyl. They all look like JS with flippers. But you know what I'm getting at. But you know what I'm getting at.
Me on Chernobyl. That's a debate for another day. There's dogs living there and they're doing just fine.
So they're cooking breakfast.
Next on JS. Radiation doesn't exist.
Well,
radiation is done.
He doesn't believe in nukes. So Mo,
imagine you go to Chernobyl and there's all these mutant dogs over there. These mutated dogs from the radiation. Crazy. Teenage Mutant Ninja Dogs.
Saying that part of the issue is they're claiming that there isn't a defined set.
My cells look like sickles and shit.
Because it's fuzzy between the two. But what if that fuzz is massive? Like you used the analogy of a grain of sand versus a beach. Well, there's a grain of sand, and then there's a litter box, and then there's a sand box, and then there's a whole beach. And so there's all these variants in between. So yes, it could be fuzzy, but that fuzz could be a multitude of things that have labels and that fuzz actually is distinctive. So it's not just 2 categories; it's now 20 or 40 or 80 or 1,000.
This might help too. There's 2 elements.
But at the end of the day, you still have the category of black and white.
Well,
here's the point of the fallacy.
Here's the difference, though. With the beach, you have a large amount of sand plus a body of water, right? Those are the 2 necessary elements to the beach, and but your analogy is a question of when in quantity, as opposed to a category within a spectrum. And the problem is we don't know what's drawing the lines of the categories within that spectrum. But we know what makes the beach, even though we don't have a number. That's a question of when.
In regard to race, it would be statistically clustering.
Who decides which clusters
based on geographical location?
Who decides which statistical clusters are significant enough to define a race?
It would, once again, statistical clustering based on geographical location. And
flippers? What?
Who decides that the statistical clustering is significant enough to designate when a race has been achieved or whatever, or designated?
Sure would have been cool to have a non-white guy on this panel. I know, right? On a this is probably where diversity would probably have been required, not required, but probably would have helped a lot on a discussion about race and if there's racism in different races. Yeah, it probably would have helped to have a little bit more diversity here.
Well, you in the example of Somalis, you knew in your head exactly what they were more likely look like based on statistical probability.
And I could just say phenotype for that if I wanted to. And like you said, phenotype is only part of race, but isn't the
when
same
I
as
asked you
race.
the question, you knew exactly in your mind exactly what they probably looked like.
Yeah, because I'm honest about that. So, but that doesn't mean race exists.
Yeah, you're actually the one making the continuum fallacy because you're saying that you're saying that you know when the grains of sand.
Go read what the continuum fallacy is.
I know what it is.
Holy
I know
shit.
what it is.
Go read what the continuum fallacy is, JS. Marte pretty much agrees with JS. I don't think he does. I mean, I don't know if he changed. I don't know. Maybe Marte has changed, but Marte debated against JS, did he not? It was Marte versus JS, right? That they had a debate on if race exists. Or was it someone else against JS? Could have sworn it was Marte.
You're saying that you know when the grains of sand became the pile of sand. I'm saying we don't know.
I'm not saying that. No. When did I ever claim to know? You're the one asking because when does it exactly happen? And I'm saying that's a fallacy. No. And you engage it all the time. You don't even realize it. And you proving this right now by giving it back to me in the wrong format. You don't even know what the fuck you're talking about.
No, you're so smug and you just want to say something's a fallacy. You're making an appeal to consensus fallacy because you're saying just because everybody agrees at this time period you came from Africa, therefore you're black. I'm saying no, we need to go back to the beginning. We need to go back to the rock that broke down into the sand and became the pile of sand. That rock is the same rock.
Right. And my typical expectation of what a person's going to look like in a given area does not prove that race exists. It just proves that statistics exist, which is not the same as race. Because statistically, you can look at crime and say, well, this particular group finds a descriptor of the most crime in a given crime unit or whatever. But that doesn't tell me what race is or that race exists.
It's not a consensus fallacy. What I'm doing is I'm pointing out to like a distribution. I can't talk tonight. It's getting late. Distribution. Thank you. Of a population, not a belief about like a claim. I'm at the end of my wine bottle or wine cup here. So,
but even then, not
damn wine and a corn cob pipe is bringing out the class tonight, huh?
That still comes down to
it's descriptive.
Yeah.
Who describes
objective?
But who determines which descriptive features are significant enough to designate when a race is and isn't?
All of this would be perceptive based on history and how people perceive others. Of course, you're going to perceive them a certain way based on their phenotype, and it's like, oh, where do you come from? Oh, you come from this land. And then they start drawing the borders and mapping it out and saying, okay, this is where you're from. Hey, the people from this area tend to look like this.
Right, but that's just circumstantial based on genetics of parents. That doesn't mean that there's such a thing as race that phenotype doesn't already cover.
It's not necessarily parents, because you could have one parent somewhere, have a parent with someone else. I'm saying statistically clustering from a geographical location based on ancestry.
Abe, is that the same person that Emmett gets into it? I just know, like, I skipped ahead because I saw the beginning of when Emmett goes on, and then I kind of skipped ahead a bit, and then I just see Emmett yelling at somebody. I was like, what happened? I was like, well, I'm going to watch the rest of this on the stream.
Explain that without the parents thing, because I don't understand what you're getting at.
Well, you say it's on. I'm saying you say it's on parents or
Steel
something,
Man,
right?
Like, no wonder.
That's you could have a parent that, he's from one area, and then another parent's from a way across the world from somewhere else. They're going to have a very different genetic makeup. Of their kids are going to have a very different genetic makeup, but they're going to have genetic makeups from the two different areas.
What's the Appalachian fallacy?
I don't know.
No idea, actually.
My chat's making fun of Mo because they're just throwing out all
if
these
you're from
fallacies.
Appalachia, you're valid.
JS's chat is making fun of Mo. All right.
See.
The phallus fallacy.
I've only appealed to one fallacy, which is the very what JS does constantly, and he does it all the time.
You're not using the genetic fallacy, though?
I'm not using the genetic fallacy. I'm not using whatever fallacy. I don't know. Like, no, I'm not appealing to any other fallacies other than the one that JS is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Which actually, I would say, fallacy. I don't know what might be a fallacy, but apparently, according to JS, he can peer in. He has access to other people's minds to know if they're actually racist or not, which is a freaking that's a crazy bold claim.
Well, he doesn't believe racism exists, so he couldn't claim to have that, though.
Yeah, I know. He's begging the question again.
No, fallacy. He's saying that racism doesn't exist. I'm not begging the question. That wasn't a question. That was a statement.
Well, here's the thing. What Mo is getting at, JS, is that in order to make your claim that racism doesn't exist, you would have to know what everybody's thinking at all times in order to establish that claim. So that's what he's getting at.
You think begging the question means you asked a question?
No.
Begging the question is assuming the conclusion in your premise.
Assuming a conclusion in the premise, yes.
Yeah, so when you say, I know people are racist, I'm saying, what is racism? I don't even believe in racism.
Here's how you know. You see what they do, and you hear what they say, and you hear their reasonings for it. So when people say, if the Yahtzees say the Jays are rats, and they compare them to an infestation, they are making a racist statement because they are tying their perceived lineage to an ontological, hierarchical, or moral difference based on that.
There's a moral difference in somebody based off of
their perceived lineage.
Right.
That's what racism is.
That's what people called it.
Okay.
All right.
I need at least one for the night.
Ooh. Pizza pockets are ready.
Well,
with that, there's like 12 seconds left. So if we wanted to, we could go into some closes if you gentlemen want to, and then we can
I think we've established that JS is wrong, and Rec is only half wrong. Maybe he's coming onto my side.
Wrong and half wrong.
Oh my. All right. So with that, I'm gonna let you guys do your closing. So we started with JS. Should we do it in the reverse order? Or
let's see. There is a part I wanted to get to here, but maybe it's this.
It's like, what's happening right now?
What do I do now, Mr. President?
Oh man,
he's killing zombies.
How are you in two places at once?
Yeah, you do when you fight for it. You give them power.
Here we go.
Adopt them. Yeah. To my knowledge, the best case for it as it has utility, right? But even that, I think I don't agree with
right now.
Yeah, I don't think I agree with that because case for it as it has utility, right? But even that, I think I don't agree with
right now.
Yeah, I don't think I agree with that because that goes back to my super chat, right? Just because the left employs certain things doesn't mean we should adopt them, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because so, my whole thing with the whole race stuff, so because I noticed this during like JS's last debate on this, and then like a few days later, Emmett and Marte had like a little impromptu debate on the same topic. And Emmett kind of said similar things where it's like, yeah, but the left use race to do all these things. And I was like, well, is that what this is all about? Pretty much, like, is this just all about, well, we don't want to give the left, like, we don't want to allow the left to use this shit to control everybody. I mean, listen, I understand that. I just don't know if that's like the proper way to go about it. Is just to deny race. Like, again, if you want to like try to figure out, like, if you want to start calling it something else instead or whatnot, like, but to deny these differences exist, I don't think it's the way to go. That's my whole thing, because there are differences, and I think it's important to listen, you shouldn't use these differences to enact any sort of evil or anything, but like you should be unbiased, but also it's hard to explain. It's important to acknowledge some of these differences sometimes is what I'm trying to say. So to say that it doesn't exist, I don't think it's the right way to go. Yes, we are not giving anything to the left. Not one step back, baby. Hey, listen, I'm down to not give shit to the left, but it's just they could also weaponize that in itself. So, for instance, if we say, oh, blacks are 13% of the population, but committing 50% of the crime, well, then they could just shoot back at us. Oh, but I thought race doesn't exist. I thought race doesn't exist. So why should we focus on this stuff? Like, how can we make our own arguments if we say that race doesn't exist? Then what's separating the blacks from the whites or the Japanese or something? It's irrelevant except of the case of identifiers for bad culture like melanin at the moment. Yeah, but it's more than just the melanin. It's more than just that. Anyway, this was a good debate, really interesting conversation. Really good conversation to have. When you talk about this race, it sounds ridiculous on the surface. Does race exist or whatnot? But I get sometimes the confusion because it's like, yeah, at one point, like, you have when is it ethnicity versus race? And it could all be kind of confusing. I also get the whole logic too of trying to diffuse the left and stop them from trying to weaponize things like race. I'm just not sure if this is the way to go about it, because there are differences between different races, if you will, different groups of people, and to just ignore it, I don't know. And then they could use that against us too. It's like, how can we bring up certain differences if we say race isn't real? It's like I think it's real, but it's good to argue the semantics, like the little nuances, I guess. The word games sorted out. But anyway, what did you guys think about this? If you want to see the full debate, I'll leave a link in the description down below. Subscribe to Abe Dinkus's channel. He has been having these Foursquare debates. It's been pretty good. I've been enjoying them, so check them out. Subscribe to his channel. I'll see you guys all later. Ladies and gentlemen, did you enjoy that video? I hope you did. If you did, make sure you like and subscribe, or else you're gay. I'm sorry, I don't make the rules. I'm just trying to save you from sin. Also, make sure you catch the cool stream live Mondays through Fridays right here on my YouTube channel. And make sure you follow me at any of these links down below for everything Cool Vic.